One of the biggest since Classroom Elite anime ever committed is the fact that they almost entirely skip Volume 4.5 from their existence. Even though it's understandable that it will be hard to put them between the second season, the content of Volume 4.5 should be perfect to become a bonus episode, because Volume 4.5 is by far the funniest volume to read among all 32 volumes. After the intense special exam from the previous 2 volumes, Ayanokoji and the others could finally enjoy their summer break without any worrying. Volume 4.5 offers the interaction between characters and the other side of their personality that we rarely saw, so this volume feels like a rainbow after a long and exhausting storm. The volume started with Ayanokoji sending 100,000 points to Pseudo, which is a pretty confusing action to start a story. However, we will later learn the full story through the flashback, and I think this is quite a refreshing way for Classroom Elite to tell their story. Ayanokoji later goes to Kyoki Mall to have a fortune-telling, and this is where the fun begins. Ayanokoji surprisingly meets Ibuki, who also wants to have her fortune read, and her interaction with Ayanokoji is honestly pure 24-karat gold. Ibuki's introduction in Volume 3 gives the impression of an unfriendly tomboy girl who loves to fight, but this volume showed us a completely different side of her who is actually cute and funny. Going to fortune-telling alone already betrayed Ibuki's character, but being willing to be a couple with Ayanokoji just for a palm reading is not something that you will ever expect from her. Their interaction in this volume is actually important to understand Ibuki's action later, such as why she was angry when she learned that Ayanokoji is ex, or why she is so competitive against Horikita, but sadly their interaction is rarely even mentioned in the future volume. This volume actually made me believe that Ibuki had a thing for Ayanokoji, because being trapped inside a lift could easily trigger the suspension bridge effect. But even though I was deeply rooting for her, I guess I prefer Ibuki to simply become an enemy of Ayanokoji. Next we have Katsuragi's story with his sister's birthday present. This part of the story is actually quite important because it involves the student council and the hole in the school system, but since the story will never be mentioned again, I guess we could just read it for entertainment. Just like Ibuki's story, Katsuragi's story showed us a different side of him. Even though we didn't get much action from Katsuragi in volumes 3 and 4, we could guess that he is a calculative and serious guy, but this volume took it further that he is actually an adorable guy full of respect. He obeyed the rules and even enforced them to a certain level, but it will be different when it comes to something really personal. The entire plot of Katsuragi's story is how he could send his present to his sister outside the school. And the way Ayanokoji could find a hole using the inter-school competition is honestly incredible, so it's a shame that this method was never explored further. However, the connection between Ayanokoji, Katsuragi, and Pseudo when they cooperate to break the school rule together is oddly satisfying to read, which is another reason why it's a shame they never explore it further. Katsuragi ended up paying Pseudo 100,000 points for his trouble, and that was the end of their relationship. Next we have another love story from the memory of youth. If you are wondering why Yamauchi stopped obsessing over Sakura in the second season, Volume 4.5 answered it with the third story, where Yamauchi decides to confess to Sakura. The result is obvious, but Yamauchi still decides to confess. This volume actually did Yamauchi justice after the previous 4 volumes treated him like a donkey, so this volume becomes a must-read if you are Yamauchi fans. I found it funny that Sakura asked Ayanokoji to stay and watch the confession. It must be really awkward for Sakura to be confessed while the guy she liked standing beside her, but it also sad that Yamauchi's courage cannot shake Sakura to do the same thing as him. After that we got a bit of a wholesome moment from Yamauchi, who got rejected, and he almost looked like a decent guy in this scene, but just like the other stories, this part will later forgotten and never mentioned again. Next we have the funniest scene that involves the most serious and cold-looking girl, Horikita Suzune. This scene actually feels disconnected from the other stories, but manages to outshine all the previous stories. The story started with Ayanokoji receiving a weird call from Horikita, so Ayanokoji decided to visit her room to make sure nothing bad was happening. The opening itself was already interesting because it told us that Ayanokoji had already become Horikita's emergency call if she ever got into trouble, mainly because she has no other friend. However, when Ayanokoji finally sees what's happening to Horikita, that is where Horikita loses all her dignity as a cold princess who enjoys her solitude, because even Horikita is capable of doing something stupid such as inserting her hand in the thermos. Their journey to try removing the bottle from her hand is a pure comedy heaven, because she still tries to maintain her dignity while looking so pathetic. The ending is anticlimactic, but at least Ayanokoji gets blackmail material to force Horikita to join them visiting the swimming pool. And now we arrive at the last story where Ayanokoji and the gang decide to visit the swimming pool. This part is the only story that got adapted into the anime, but with a lot of improvisation because they adapted this story before the deserted island exam. The whole story is mostly the same as with the anime, but instead of Horikita, Ayanokoji asked Kei to sabotage the Three Idiots' plan and destroy the memory card. Other than fan service, there is not much that could be talked about in this part, but this story ended with a wholesome Ayanokoji and Kei moment that became the beginning of their long cooperation. It is really a shame that both the manga version and the anime version skipped this moment, because Kei wearing a swimsuit and letting herself be open in front of Ayanokoji showed a lot of her transformation. But at least in the light novel version we are spared from Horikita's cringe declaration and the confusion about why in the world Sakayanagi decided to visit the swimming pool, and why Komuro agreed to go with her. In conclusion, even though this volume feels so disconnected from the other volume, this volume is still a must-read purely because of the comedy and character interaction. This volume is the reminder that Ayanokoji and the others are still high school students. Even though the school itself is extraordinary, they still have a moment where they don't need to worry about anything, and just focus enjoying their youth to the fullest.